Well, good morning. Ready to be rich? Who's ready to be rich? Anybody? Nobody? I tell you, I was just sitting here. I sit on the front row, and it's really cool because when you sit on the front row, you can't see anybody except for what's going on up here. And you should try it sometime. Y'all should just come on down. Good seats down here. But it's just cool to be. I was just sitting there thinking this morning how great it is just to be in church with you guys. Just with all of you, and as I look around, I see all of you, and I see my friends and people. I see my church, and this just feels good to me, right? Yeah, we should all feel that way. We should all feel that way because this is my church. You are my church. This is what church is to me, and I love just hearing you guys sing. It's such a pretty sound from the front row to listen to everybody sing and worship our God. But I'm so glad to be in church. I love being here with all of you each week, and it does good for my soul. But I'm just really incredibly excited to kick off Be Rich this year. If you're new with us, this is something that we've done for the past couple of years. But this year we're again kicking off our Be Rich campaign, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that, what it means to be rich, and why we kicked that off. But we are really, really excited over the next couple of weeks to be talking about this. Next 2 or 3 weeks, we're actually going to be talking about what it means to be rich and what that looks like for us. And Cheryl touched on some of that this morning with Operation Christmas Child. And I would just say if you've not experienced or not done a lot of research on Operation Christmas Child, we have the candy cane, which is something that our church does here locally for our kids. But Operation Christmas Child gives us an opportunity to impact people all over the world. And it was interesting. Actually, this year we take our youth to Big Stuff every year, and I don't know. We talk about that a lot, but this year at Big Stuff, we had an opportunity to hear from somebody who was on the receiving end of that shoebox. He was a guy that was raised in a village in Africa, and he had never received a Christmas gift ever in his life. It was the only time, and particularly he shared a story about how he was actually wanting shoes. And it just so happened that the box he received had shoes in it that were exactly his size, and how it impacted his life and his walk with Christ. And he told his story, but it put a face with it for me. And so really, really great opportunity that we have an opportunity to do that. But anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit about what it means for us to be rich and what it means for you to be individually. Jeremy just prayed what I love his prayer was just, what does that mean collectively for us as a church to be rich? But what does that mean for us to be individually rich? And so I just have a question for you this morning, like I do a lot of times, is how many of you guys have leftovers in your fridge right now? Just raise them. How long have they been there? Because I'm pretty sure we have so many leftovers in our fridge, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but we don't want to waste food. We don't typically try to do that, but we typically cook too much or whatever, and then we end up with leftovers in our refrigerator. And then typically what happens is they stay in the refrigerator for a really long time. There was some chili in there that. Well, I think it was chili. I'm not sure if it started out that way, but that's what was in there, or what it looked like the other day. But typically on Wednesday night, Cheryl and I, after Youth Loop, we'll go home and okay, we got to clean out the fridge right now because the Grider boys are coming. So JR, I usually give that to JR on Thursday morning. He comes and gets my leftovers that I throw out. And it's just, we just typically don't consume them quick enough. We don't, we're busy or we're not at home to warm them up or for whatever reason, we typically don't consume these leftovers or the extra that we have quick enough. And so we let it sit too long, and then it's not good to anyone, and then we have to end up throwing that out, and it becomes wasteful. And so it's just part of the way our family works. My kids hate leftovers. There's always that. You never get them quite warm. There's always that little cold piece that, mashed potatoes. I don't know. But anyway, we don't consume them quick enough. And so today I want to take a look at a passage of Scripture that kind of talks to that. And really today it's a passage of Scripture in James, and it was written by, yes, James. Man, love that. But we are a passage of Scripture that was written by James. And just so you know, A little bit about who James was. James was, and some of you may know this, some of you may not, but James was actually the brother of Jesus. And so James is actually, in this passage of Scripture, going to pretty metaphorically take us to the woodshed this morning, okay? He's pretty straightforward. And so I want to dive into that. And here's how James begins his letter and what he has to say to us. In James chapter 5, verse 1, he says this, "Now listen, you rich people." Now, if you're in this group, or even just like what he's saying to us, you're probably looking around going, okay, where are the rich people? You know, you're looking over your shoulder because I know he ain't talking to me because I got like $6.20 in my checking. But whatever it is, he says, now listen, you rich people. And if this is your first time here, this is your first time, I want to remind you that, and you've probably heard me say this before, but if you are here this morning and you live in America and you're sitting in here and you have clothes and shoes and a place to sleep and a roof over your head, you are in fact rich. Incredibly rich. In fact, if you have a household income collectively of over $33,000, you are in the 1% club. Did you know that? That you are in the top 1% of wealth in the world. If you have a collective income of $33,000 or greater in your household, you are in the 1% club. So congratulations. Many of us here are incredibly, incredibly wealthy. When you look at where we stand and where we sit with what we have and the stuff that we've accumulated and the finances we have and the resources that we have as Americans and as people who live in this country, we are incredibly, incredibly wealthy. In the first century, during James's time when he wrote this, there was this assumption. There was an assumption by many, and they embraced that rich people were God's favorite. That's why when Jesus said when he was talking when he told the people, he said, "Hey, it's going to be easier for a rich person to get through the eye of a needle than it will be a camel to get to heaven than a camel through an eye of a needle." The reason why he was saying that is because there was, and his disciples were shocked by that, and this is what James is alluding to. The reason is because there was this assumption in the first century that if you were rich, you were blessed, like God had blessed you, and you were his favorite, and you were God's favorites because he had blessed you with more. And now, it was kind of an Old Testament covenant concept, and the New Testament authors taught something different. But rich people, let me just tell you something. Rich people, and we've established really at the foundation here this morning that we're all rich, right? We've established that. So when I say rich people, I'm talking to all of us because we're all incredibly rich if we live in this country. Rich people aren't more loved. Rich people are more responsible, or at least we should be, right? So today we're going to spend some time taking a look at the book of James, which is oddly enough, it was written by James, who was actual brother of Jesus. And for some reason, growing up, I don't know when I thought of Jesus, I just always thought of Jesus as an only child. I don't know why that is, because it's not true. Jesus had siblings, he had brothers and sisters, and so James was actually, Mary and Joseph continued to have children and build their family after Jesus was born, and so he had this brother named James, and it's just weird thinking of. I just can't imagine, why can't you be more like your brother? It's just, I can't imagine the pressure that James felt, right? Why can't you be more like Jesus, James? His whole life, he was a younger brother, but, I don't know if he was second or where he fell, but I have second child syndrome, and, Jesus was the first kid, and, they have all the pictures of Jesus and no pictures of you, and tons of pictures of Jesus and none of you. And so it's second child syndrome. I've dealt with it. But this, I just identify with James here. But I was convinced, but what Jesus had to do was actually convince James at some point in time that he was in fact the Son of God. I mean, if my brother told me he was the Son of God, I'd be like, shut your pie hole. It's just like, shut up. Get off of me. But Jesus did that. And he had eventually convinced his brother James that he was, in fact, the Son of God. And so James had this relationship really with, we think about your and I's relationship with Jesus and what that feels like and looks like. I mean, James had that relationship, but it was his brother. I mean, that was weird. But so that's who we're talking to. I just kind of want to give you a little bit of picture of James. And so he goes on, he says, now listen, you rich people. He said, weep and wail because of the miseries that are coming on you. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about rich people, you see these athletes who are signing like ridiculous, $1,000,000, and I think it's all relative because we look at them and like, man, have you ever had that thought? Like, man, if I had that kind of money, what would I do? What would I do if I was that wealthy? And it's all relative because somewhere in the world, somebody is looking at you going, man, if I had that kind of money, what would I do? And it's all relative. But when you think about rich people, you don't think weep and wail. What do they got to weep and wail over their future for? Because rich people don't worry about what's next. They got money in the bank. What do they worry about? Why should they weep and wail? James is saying, now listen, you rich people, weep and wail because of the miseries that are coming on you. Seriously, what miseries could come on rich people? Because they have everything. They've got all their needs met. They don't have to worry about what they're going to eat. They don't have to worry about paying the bills or paying the electric bill or how we're going to pay the car payment this month or how we're going to pay the insurance or that medical bill that came that it's like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. The car broke down. I got to. They don't worry about that stuff, right? So what seriously? What are they? But James was smart, and he knew that rich people worry about the future. They put all of their trust in their wealth, and then you know what they worry about? Losing it. You worry about, I'm not going to have enough. I'm not going to have enough, so I've got to hoard this. I've got to keep it like a leftover in the refrigerator because I might eat that someday. I might use that. I need to sit on that. And there's this fine balance of being, I got a savings. And I think it's good to have savings and that type of thing. But where do we find the balance between hoarding what God has blessed us with and being outrageously generous? And so James is telling these rich people, hey, you better weep and wail because of the miseries that are coming on you. And really, if you look throughout history, it was really prophetical. It was a prophetic statement because what happened to the people that James is talking to here, we'll get into that a little bit later, but it was really true. But the more you have, the more you worry about. You worry about not having enough. There's always this endless sense of, well, what if this happens, right? There's always this endless sense of, well, what if we do this and I need to have that put away, and what if this happens or what if this happens, I need to have that. And so what we worry about is we don't worry about stuff, we worry about not having enough. That's what rich people do. We worry about, there's going to come some, I'm going to lose it somehow. This mass of wealth that I've accumulated for myself. He goes on in verse 2 and he says this, your wealth has rotted and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. In other words, they had hoarded and saved so much that it decayed over time. And James was pointing out that their silver and gold had chipped and tarnished. And now it's not good for anything to anybody. Just another question for you. Any of you have old cell phones at your house? Go ahead. You can. I have a drawer full of them. Anybody? Am I alone? Okay. Here's the thing. I have all these cell phones. We get new cell phones and blah, 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 and you take your old one, and what do you do with it? You put it in a drawer because I might need that someday, right? Or I might use that, or I don't want to get rid of that, or I don't want to sit on that. And so if you go to my house, I could take you to a drawer, and I've got a drawer full. There's 5 of us in our family, and we all have cell phones, and when they get new ones, I just take all 5 of them, and I just throw them in this drawer. So I've got a drawer full of cell phones. Now, at some point in time, those cell phones probably would have been good to somebody, right? At some point in time, somebody could have used them. But I didn't get them to anybody because I thought I might need that. I hold on to it, and I sit on it. And that's what we do with our money and our wealth and our stuff. If I'd given it away immediately, there's somebody probably could have used it. But instead, it's stuck in a drawer just in case I would use it later. And the issue is not how much comes in, but it's how much we're willing to give away. And so James continued, and this was a common, he continued, and he's like a prosecuting attorney, and James begins to levy all of his charges against rich people. And he goes on, and this was commonly used, like in that time, judgment was really, in that first century, judgment was very public, and it was very in your face, and they weren't worried about offending anybody or being politically correct. James was just throwing it all out there. It wasn't, we didn't have all these feelings and stuff. But James, he goes on, and James assures these people that God would hold everyone accountable for what they do, but also for all their stuff. In case we weren't following the argument, James says this: you have hoarded wealth in the last days. And the assumption was that the end was near. And his point is this: why hoard when your time is short? Why sit on all this stuff when Scripture tells us all of a sudden that our life is like a vapor? It appears for a second and then it's gone. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more I realize that, how quickly our lives pass. We should all wrestle with that question. Why hoard when your time is short? Every single one of us should wrestle with that. You're going to run out of time. Listen to this. You're going to run out of time before you run out of stuff. Have any of you had a parent that's moved and downsized or passed away, and then you had to go in and clean up the stuff? Anybody ever experienced that? For any kids there that have experienced that, and you go in and you're like, oh my word. My dad had all kinds of stuff. It was junk. But we did. I mean, and I'm guilty too. I cleaned out my shed last week. I got so much. I've got a lawnmower in the back of my truck right now. I don't know what to do with it. Anybody need a lawnmower? Help yourself. Push mower. It's right out there in the back of my truck. We just got so much junk. Have you ever been to your basement and open up your storeroom and go, what in the world? I don't even know what's in that box. Anybody? I guarantee all of us. Now, some of you, I know are really good at purging. Beth Dice, where are you? She's really good at that. She's like, woo, freedom. If you need some help, call Beth Dice. She'll just throw everything away. But wouldn't it be cool if we would just go out of this world with virtually nothing? Wouldn't that be kind of cool? If we just gave everything away and we left this earth with what we brought into it? I don't know, some of you are like, well, that's dumb. And I understand there's savings and that type. And I've got a 401k and an IRA and, that type of thing. I get that. But why hoard our stuff and our time and our money and we just buy more stuff and more stuff and we just put it in the storeroom and then we have a yard sale every year and mess with that. But here's what James is saying. What we do now will determine the story that our kids tell and the example that they see. Like our kids see that. James 5:4 says, look, the wages, and this was interesting. James 5:4, he goes on. He says, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. Now, what you have to understand, in the first century, wealthy landowners were frequently criticized by Greco-Roman world for exploiting their workers. In other words, they would take these workers, they would exploit them. There were loopholes in the laws that allowed them not to pay proper wages for people that worked for them or did something for them. And so James is calling them out right here. He says, look at the wages you failed to pay workers who mowed your fields and crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. In other words, they had legally, what these landowners had done in the first century is they had legally taken advantage of the less advantaged. I mean, it was legal. They felt okay about it because it was legal. But morally, it was wrong. They had amassed great wealth, and they had done nothing with it. In fact, they had taken advantage of less fortunate people to amass this wealth. And so James's point in this is this, that resourced people shouldn't look for loopholes to get by with doing less. Resource people, in other words, people who have resources and people who have things shouldn't look for a loophole to get by with doing less. In other words, you're like, well, I pay my tithe, they can deal with that. Well, technically that's okay. But we shouldn't be just looking for a reason to do less. Resource people should look for opportunities to do more. When we have resources and God has blessed us and richly blessed us, we should be taking those resources and going, wow, I should look for opportunities to do more with this and help other people with it. But if there's more to this, here's the thing. If that's all there is to life, and really we can justify it by saying, well, I don't owe I don't owe anybody anything because I've earned every penny I have. And people say that, like, well, I've worked hard for what I have, and I get that. Some of you are probably wealthier than you've ever been in your life. Some of you have resources and finances and things and houses and land and cars and blah. Whatever you have, some of you probably have more than you've ever had in your entire life. And I get it. That didn't fall out of the sky. You didn't wake up one day and go, well, look at all this stuff I have. Look at all the resources that I have. You've worked hard for it. Many of you have busted your hump. And you've sacrificed, and you've done things right, and you've made good investments, and you've worked hard, and you've done everything by the grit of your own whatever, and you've amassed this. And I get it, but to say that I don't owe anybody anything because I've earned every penny I have, but if there's more to life than that, there may be more to that. Jesus taught that we are stewards, not owners, that God owns everything that we have. And according to Jesus, you're to be commended for working hard. Jesus told us that. When I open the New Testament and look, I'm commended for working hard and being a good steward with my gifts and my talents. In other words, what God has gifted me with, what He has blessed me with, I'm to be commended for using that. Jesus even told us that. I also discover that I'm commanded to be above average generous person and willing to share. Above all of the stuff that we're to be commended for, and above all my hard work, the New Testament also tells me that I should be outrageously generous and be willing to share what I have accomplished and what God has blessed me with other people. James 5:5 says this: you have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You've been greedy. You become a victim of consumption assumption. Consumption assumption means, well, I've worked hard. It's what I've worked for is mine, so it's for my consumption only. That whatever I have that I've worked hard for, and by the grit of my teeth and blah blah blah, the sweat of my brow, I've accomplished all this, and so I assume that since I've worked for it, that it's mine. That's wrong. It's God's, because He's blessed you with. He's given you the ability, the smarts, and the ability to do that. Everything belongs to God anyway. But we just assume that everything that we make is for our own consumption. Well, it's mine. It's mine. James goes on. He said, but little do you know, and he's talking to these group of people that are incredibly rich. James continued, and he says, but little did you know, you have fattened yourself in the day of slaughter. In that time, rich people fattened calves to slaughter them for a celebration. And what James is saying here is you have fattened yourself for your own slaughter. And I just have to wonder if some of us are doing that. If we're fattening ourselves for our own slaughter. James says this. Here's some other. James was martyred in 62 AD. He was ordered to be stoned to death by the high priest, these people that he was talking to. The high priest of the church ordered him to be stoned. So they drug him out and they stoned him to death. And then exactly 7 years later, these rich people that James was talking to in Judea were trapped inside the city of Jerusalem. Read your history. They were trapped inside the city of Jerusalem by the Romans. All these rich people who had sat on their stuff and all of their wealth, who had taken advantage of less fortunate people to amass this great wealth. They were surrounded by Roman legions. They weren't allowed to leave. And you know what happened? People starved. They died of disease. They were murdered. They were enslaved. And those who survived eventually expelled. And all of their wealth, all of this wealth that they had amassed and sat on was carted off to Rome. So James had predicted it. And those with the most to lose lost the most. And the moral of the story is this: give while the giving's good. Let's give while the giving's good. Let's give out of the abundance and the resources that all of us have. We make time and money to do anything and everything we want to do. Let's give while the giving is good. Let's start giving while you're living, because what you're holding is molding. How about that? Heard that, read that this week. What you're holding on to is like my chili in the fridge. It's like those cell phones in your drawer. Somebody in our community could benefit from it if we would just let go of it now and not let it sit in a storeroom and not let it sit. I don't know what that translates to you, and I'm going to let you figure that out. But what you cling to now may be, what you're clinging to now may be the embarrassment for you later. So, with that said, I'm going to let you all sort out that individually with each one of you. Okay? I don't know where that lands with you today. I know where it lands with me today, and I've already prayed and been talking about what God wants me to do and how he wants me to be obedient in that way. And I'll let you do the same individually, what that means to you individually. Just like Jeremy said, we need to think about what this means to us collectively as a congregation, as a church, but what does that mean to you individually? And so here's what we're going to do in the few minutes that I have left here. Just so you know, in the meantime, we are going to take action. I don't know what it means to you individually, but in the meantime, as our church, we're going to take action collectively as a church. Here's what we're doing, and this is why we do Be Rich. And just so you know, just a little heads up about our church. What you should know is that our church doesn't necessarily have a savings account. That we are in fact a non-for-profit organization. And we give away thousands of dollars every year as a church, collectively, because we feel like that's what God has called us to do. And if you've been around here over the past few years, you know that we do this Be Rich, and we take part. We're not the only churches that take part in this. We're actually part of a network of churches that participate in this every year. This year, there are 69 churches in 16 states, 4 countries, 115,000 people, and 340 nonprofit organizations that will receive benefit from Be Rich this year across other churches. And so it's a month-long generosity campaign, and so we're going to talk about it all in the month of November. And it's called Be Rich, and we believe that everybody matters to God, whether God matters to them or not. Like, we believe that everybody matters to God, whether they are in a relationship with God or whether they believe in God or whether they don't. We just believe that. And so we partner. What we've done is we partner with organizations in and around our community. And there are fabulous nonprofit organizations that are around this area, and we partner with them, and then we work to try to give them resources through our Be Rich campaign. And so here's how it works. There are 3 components. There is the give component, which is what we're talking about today, right? There's a serve component that we'll talk about next week, and the week after that, we'll talk about what it means to love people. And we'll talk about those three components of this Be Rich campaign. And over the past several months, we've been researching opportunities and organizations that we could partner with to show people in and around our community the love of Jesus through our outrageous generosity. And so the goal of Be Rich is this, that we would have 100% participation and 100%, and we're going to give 100% of it away. Okay, so everything that we raise during Be Rich, we don't keep a single cent of that here at church. It doesn't go to pay our pastor salaries. It doesn't go to pay light bill. It doesn't go to pay any expenses here at the church. Everything that we raise is part of our Be Rich campaign. 100% of it will actually go back into our community in a number of different ways in and around Salem, and that's what we're planning to do this year as well. So the goal for this, Rich, is now here's the goal. We have a figure in mind that we would actually like everyone to be able to give, and that figure is this: $39.95. Okay, for only $39.95, that is what we are asking you guys to give. We are asking, we'd love to have 100% participation, and we would love everybody to be able to afford to give $39.95 to Be Rich. That's it. That's what we're asking. And I think that if we do that, roughly size of our congregation, we should raise somewhere in the neighborhood of around $16,000. I can tell you we raised more than that last year. We raised a little bit over almost $17,000 last year, of which we gave every single penny away. And through a number of different things. And so here's what I would love to do. I'd love to see us raise 20. And I would love to just give to bless people in and around our community. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to use the funds, part of the funds, for local foster care initiatives, parents and people and organizations that are pouring into kids who need homes. We believe that. Yeah. We have always supported the families that we have in our church, and we have a lot of families in our church that have stepped up and said, "Hey, we're gonna step into these kids' lives, and we're gonna make a difference." And so we believe, as a church, and what Jesus has told us to do in the New Testament and take care of widows and orphans. Hey, it's a win-win. We should do that. So that's what we're gonna do. We're going to use part of the funds this year. We've identified through our local schools that we have a lot of kids who actually have balances on their lunch account, and so we want to try to pay those off. We want to go to the schools, and these kids whose families are struggling and can't pay their lunch account. We've identified and we've been in contact with all the area schools, and we're going to actually go and try to pay as much of that off as we can and pay off kids' lunches account. Then, see, it's fun, isn't it? Last year we did something that I like to call Got Gas. Somebody told me I should probably rename that, but I kind of like it. And so a couple of us last year, and we're going to do the same this year, we showed up at gas station here in town, and we just bought people's gas. We filled their cars up. It was really, and if you would love to be a part of that, we'd love to have you a part of that, because it's just really cool to walk up to somebody at the gas tank because they're really freaked out that somebody's approaching them at the gas tank. Like, okay, this guy's asking me for money, and then you peck on their window and go, "Hey, we would really like to fill your car up during the holiday season." Just a cool thing. People cry. People get out of their car. They hug us. It's just really a lot of fun. We'll do random acts of kindness this year through our Be Rich, which is basically what we do, because sometimes as pastors, we get the fun of actually experiencing this and taking the money that you guys give and give it to people and see the reactions. And so we would love for you to feel that. And so one of the things that we've done over the past several years that we'll continue to do is when we get through our Be Rich program, one Sunday we'll announce it, and then some of you will get cash. We'll create some creative way to give that. If you remember, last year we brought people up on stage and we just gave them cash, and what we do with that, we give you cash, and we ask that you take that cash, put some money with it, and then bless somebody with it. Pay for somebody's groceries. Pay for I don't care. Do whatever you do, and then share with us the stories that you do with that. And so we're going to try to do some of that as well this year. Other organizations like our Pregnancy Care Center that does a great work in our community, we've identified a program there that's called Embrace Grace, which is cool because it has our name in it. And so this is a program that our Pregnancy Care Center has, and they provide training and support for new mothers. It costs about $100 a mother to do that for them, and so we would love to be able to sponsor and pay for a lot of these new mothers to get training and education on how to be a new mother, and I think that's just a great thing that we should do to support our families and our community. Bread and fish as well. So that's just what we're going to do with some of the Be Rich if we can. We'll see what we raise and what we're able to do with that. But those are the organizations that we feel like we should be supporting this year through our Be Rich. In addition to Be Rich, outside of Be Rich, that's separate from Be Rich, is something that we continue to do around here that's just part of who we are normally. And that is our Candy Cane Project, where we actually adopt children in our community that have needs. And the Candy Cane Project does that. We provide, there are some toys, but mostly it's basic needs like coats and underwear and socks and shoes and things that kids need in and around our community. Stacy Russell leads that ministry for us, and we're going to continue to do that as well. We have our food pantry that we do as well. We'll talk a little bit more about serving opportunities with our food pantry this year. We're going to be actually, we started something last year that we did for the first time. We're going to be hosting a Thanksgiving dinner here at our church. For anybody that wants to come that doesn't have a place to go, there will be opportunities for you to give in that, and there will be opportunities for you to also serve, which we'll talk more about next week there. But those are just some of the things that we want to do in and around through our Be Rich project, and these can be game changers for our partners, and they can be life changers for the people that they serve. Jesus was so clear in his teaching that our devotion to God is demonstrated and authenticated through our love for others. Our extravagant generosity toward others is the appropriate response to God's extravagant generosity to us. And we celebrated that this morning in communion. He gave us his only son. What can you give him? And so that's what we're going to ask you to do this year at Be Rich. I'm proud to be part of a church that embraces this, and you guys have always stepped up to the plate and helped us, and I just can't wait to see what we're able to raise and what we're able to do in and through our community. And I want people to feel that. I want them not that they feel Grace Church of the Nazarene and that we get some kind of credit for it, but they feel that we, this ecclesia, this group of people, the people that are sitting beside you, in front of you, and behind you, that they feel the love of Jesus through each and every one of us. And I think we can accomplish that. I'm confident that we can accomplish that. So, real quick, I'm going to give you a couple ways to give, to start giving to Be Rich. $39.95. I'm not joking. That's kind of what we're asking you to give. $39.95. There's a couple different ways for you to do that. There are two ways. Obviously, you can do cash and check donations. If you have something like that today that you would like to give to it, and don't worry, it's not just today. Well, we're going to be talking through this through the whole month of November, so you'll have opportunity to give. And if you can't give the $39.95, I don't want you to feel like you're less than or something. If you just give what you feel like you can afford to give. We are asking for the check and donation. Pastor Mark is actually going to be right back here. He's actually there now at the Got Questions table. You can drop off a check or a donation for Be Rich with Pastor Mark. Now, if you want to do credit or debit donation, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. I have a little bit of a short video. They can just play that while I'm talking through that. So go ahead and, if you go to our website, you can give our website through giving. You can actually go to also to berich.org. This video, we have a video. We can post this actually on social media too if you want to watch how to do that. But if you go to berich.org, here's what you have to do. You have to go in the upper right-hand corner and select your church, which there will be a scroll down to select Salem Grace Church of the Nazarene at berich.org. And then scroll down and select Grace Church of the Nazarene, and you'll be led to a prompt that'll help you give that way. Through the Church of the Nazarene, you can go to our website and go down. You can scroll down and select Give, and then on the next page, select Give again. And then on the Salem Grace Nazarene page, if you put amount in that you wish to give, you can select that from the drop-down menu. If you have our app, if you would go to the App Store and just download the Salem Grace app, which if you haven't done that, we don't talk about that a lot anymore, but we do have an app. It's downloadable through just Apple or the Android system, either way, and you can download Salem Grace. Really great way to have it, especially with inclement weather coming up, because if we cancel church, we usually send notifications through the app, so you'd want to know that. But also there's a give portion on the app, and there's a drop down that just says Be Rich, and so you're able to do the Be Rich drop down and give that way. If you want to just write a check, just make it payable to Grace Church in the Nazarene, and mark on it Be Rich, and you can drop that off Pastor Mark today at the Got Questions table. But I'm excited about what God is going to do. It is so fun to be, it's so much fun to be generous. Let's show our community that our religion is not just sermons and songs, but it's compassion and generosity that reflects the compassion and generosity of our Heavenly Father. And so, on your mark, get set, go be rich. Thanks for being here this morning.